The art of taxidermy originated in Africa. Ancient Egyptians embalmed animals alongside people since at least 2200 BCE. Though typically not considered true taxidermy, mummification is the earliest known example of animal preservation and paved the way for the field of taxidermy as we know it. The earliest references to mounted specimens are from the 16th century in Europe, and the field took off in the 18th and 19th centuries alongside a growing interest in understanding the natural world. But this video isn't about the history of taxidermy. It's about a taxidermist, a black man and freed slave who taught, inspired, and enabled one of the greatest scientific minds. This is the story of John Edmonston. John Edmonston was born into slavery around 1790 in the Demerara region of British Guiana in South America. Little is known about his early life, but he was enslaved on a timber plantation owned by Scotsman Charles Edmonston, and it's likely that his early life was marked by the difficulties and hardships of slavery in 18th and 19th century colonies. Even his birth name is unknown. He was given the name John Edmonston by his enslaver. Around 1812, English naturalist and enslaver Charles Waterton visited Charles Edmonston, John's enslaver. Waterton taught John taxidermy and took him on expeditions into South America to collect wildlife specimens in the region. Using cutting-edge techniques developed by Waterton, John would quickly preserve specimens. In 1817, Charles Edmonston returned to Scotland, bringing John with him. It's not known if John was free prior to arriving in Scotland, but if not, he would have obtained freedom upon arrival, as owning slaves in Scotland was banned in 1778. At first, Edmonston lived in Glasgow, but by 1824, he was living in Edinburgh and working and teaching at the university. In February of 1826, Edmonston would begin teaching a young Charles Darwin. Only 17 at the time, Darwin was attending medical school at the University of Edinburgh and not enjoying it. He decided to take taxidermy classes and spent at least 40 hours over 2 months learning taxidermy from Edmonston. In his autobiography, Darwin said that Edmonston, quote, had traveled with Waterton and gained his livelihood by stuffing birds, which he did excellently. He gave me lessons for payment, and I often used to sit with him, for he was a very pleasant and intelligent man. It's not known for certain what Darwin and Edmonston discussed. However, it's likely that Edmonston told Darwin about his experiences in South America, its wildlife, and his expeditions with Waterton. In 1831, Darwin boarded the HMS Beagle, marking the beginning of a 5-year globe-spanning voyage. It was during this voyage that Darwin would begin to develop his theory of evolution through natural selection. The origin of species through natural selection states that species change and evolve over time because individuals within a population have different traits. Some of these traits are beneficial to survival, some are not. Individuals with beneficial traits are more likely to survive, reproduce, and pass on these traits to their offspring. Over several generations, advantageous traits spread throughout a population, creating change within a species and making them better adapted to their environment. And in some cases, the changes lead to an evolution of a new species entirely. In September of 1835, the Beagle landed on the Galapagos Islands in the eastern Pacific. Darwin encountered an array of unusual wildlife on the volcanic islands: giant tortoises, aquatic iguanas, and abundant avifauna. He collected specimens from the different islands. The variations between specimens, most famously the Galapagos finches, would later play a crucial role in shaping his theory of natural selection. And the taxidermy skills he learned from Edmonston allowed Darwin to preserve specimens from his voyages, including the famous Galapagos finches, which he used to support his theory. Darwin's theory of evolution transformed the field of biology and our understanding of how species originate, and Edmonston taught, inspired, and helped make Darwin's discoveries possible. Despite his skills and influence on one of biology's greatest minds, little is known about John Edmonston, an all too common reality for many Black figures in history. What little we do know about Edmonston has been largely reconstructed from the anecdotes in the accounts of those who knew him, primarily Waterton and Darwin. John Edmonston lived a fascinating life long before meeting Darwin and contributed to our understanding of the natural world, but it's also a reminder of the impacts of 19th century colonialism and the historical erasure of people of color. Darwin described Edmonston as a pleasant and intelligent man, and yet even he failed to name his teacher at all in his correspondences and autobiography, referring to Edmonstone with slurs instead. This underlines just how systemic and ingrained racism, dehumanization, and erasure of people of color was at the time, and how this affects our understanding of history in the present. Much of Charles Waterton's taxidermy collection survives and is held at the Wakefield Museum in Yorkshire, England. A selection of Darwin's finches can be found at the Natural History Museum in London, but Edmonstone, unfortunately, there are no known surviving examples of his work. I reached out to the National Museums Scotland, which received the old University of Edinburgh collections. There are references to birds prepared by Edmonstone in the old daybooks from the University of Edinburgh. However, in an email they said that, quote, pests abounded and much of the early taxidermy was lost before it could be transferred to the museum's collections. Now, this is not to say that none of his work survives. It may, but there is nothing conclusive I was able to find as of the recording of this video. It's also not known where Edmonstone was buried upon his death. As Tom Ireland wrote in his article for The Biologist, even before he met Charles Darwin, John Edmonston's life had already been remarkable, a globe-spanning and tragic reminder of the horrors of 19th century colonialism. And the effects of this tragedy persist. The lack of documentation from the time leaves us with a lack of information in the present, which affects our view of history. But Edmonston's story is fascinating and deserves to be told just as those of his more well-known contemporaries have been. That's all for today's video. If you want to learn more about John Edmonston, my sources are all in the description below. And the Natural History Museum made an excellent video about him. And if you like learning about history, both human and natural, consider giving this video a like and subscribing for more content like this. Thanks for watching and have a lovely day. Bye-bye!